Hey everyone, and welcome back. In the last video, we dove into the crazy world of Content Aware by looking at Content Aware Scale, which was introduced in Photoshop CS4. Since then, each release has been shipped with new and powerful Content Aware tools like ContentAwareFill and a Content Aware option within the Spot Healing Brush tool. We're going to be taking a look at both of these in this video. Let's dive in. I'm going to start by showing you a few examples of how ContentAwareFill works, and then an example when it may not work so well. While it's a fascinating feature, it's not always perfect. This first photo contains a few objects that I feel will distract a viewer's eye. The sign on the grass and the benches that snuck into the left side of the shot. There are certainly a few traditional ways that these objects can be removed, including the clone stamp tool, the patch tool, and the healing brush. And really all three will achieve great results, but they require a tad more manual work. For the lazy ones out there, the ContentAwareFill option may be a better option. It all starts with a selection, which can be made with any selection method that you like. Because the selection doesn't need to be very accurate, using the standard lasso tool should do the trick. It's also a good idea to leave a little bit of room around the outside of your subject. This will give Photoshop some room to work with. When your sloppy selection is ready to go, we need to bring up the fill window. You can find this option either under the edit menu, or you can quickly get to it by using a shortcut. On the Mac, it's Shift and Delete. On Windows, it's Shift and Backspace. When the fill window is visible, in the Contents menu, find and select the Content Aware option, and then press OK. If you're working with a large selection or a high-resolution image, the Content Aware process may take some time to complete. This one was obviously very basic. So what just happened? Basically, Photoshop took note of what was included in the selection, and then it started to analyze everything else around the selection for textures it can use to patch up the selected area. And I think it did a pretty good job. Now we can go ahead and get rid of the benches on the left. Using the same method, I can create a very basic selection around the benches, and then with the Shift Delete or Shift Backspace shortcut, I can bring up the fill window. Make sure that Content Aware is selected and press OK. Photoshop will do its best to figure out what should be there and make the edit. Pretty snazzy. Let's look at another example when ContentAwareFill works wonders. In this photo, which was taken in Mexico, a tourist got in the way of my shot. We could clone him out, but that would take a little while. Who has the time for that? Let me again grab my lasso tool and trace a basic selection around this pesky tourist, making sure to leave a little bit of room around his body. Shift Delete or Shift Backspace to bring up the fill window, select Content Aware, and press OK. Boom. Mr. Tourist is gone. Now you may notice, especially at the bottom of where he was standing, there's a little bit of distortion, but nothing a minute or two of cloning can't fix. When you start to deal with areas that contain a lot of different textures and objects, Content Aware starts to get confused as to what it should be using for the edit. Which brings us to our last example of Content Aware Fill. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Content Aware isn't always perfect. The ideal situation for Content Aware is an area that contains a lot of the same repeatable textures, like grass or stone. In these situations, it works wonders. But when you start to experiment on images that contain many different objects and textures, the results aren't always pretty. In this image, my obvious target is my shadow at the bottom of the image. Watch what happens when I use ContentAwareFill to attempt to remove my shadow. Because the shadow is so close to the crosswalk, Content Aware grabbed portions of that stone and threw it into our result. Clearly not what we hoped for. Sure, you can start to clone away the mess, but there is a better solution, which you're going to find out in the next video. Now to finish off this video, let's also take a quick look at another Content Aware feature that snuck into Photoshop CS5's release. Many times when working with smaller areas, I find myself gravitating towards the healing brush tools. They're quick, they're easy, and they usually get the job done. And since Photoshop CS5, the Spot Healing Brush tool has a Content Aware option. When looking at this photo here, zooming into the left side of the image, we can see a bunch of people in the background. It doesn't really make sense to waste your time with tiny selections. The Spot Healing Brush with Content Aware selected on your options bar should do the trick. For most of the people, a simple brush stroke should edit them out pretty seamlessly. But just like with ContentAwareFill, when you run into an area that contains a sudden change in texture, like you see here on the right, you may get some unexpected results. The Spot Healing Brush can also come in handy when you want to remove very thin objects, such as rope, chain, or wire. In many cases, you can make a single brush stroke from the beginning to the end of the rope, which should give you pretty nice results. If anything, any leftover bits can either be cloned away, or you can continue using the spot healing brush tool to finish it off. So hopefully this video gave you an idea of what Content Aware Fill and the spot healing brush can be helpful for. In the next and final video on Content Aware, we're going to be looking at the new Content Aware Patch tool and the new Content Aware Move tool. We'll see you soon.